So lately I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos and such that basically talk about similar things in the AAA industry in games. Things such as most AAA games are starting to look very much like the same. Most studios that are really big are copying each other. Originality only comes from indies. And then there's a new component on this multiplayer versus single player, because I feel like there's so many games asking for your attention multiplayer wise that I think gamers are starting to veer off towards a single player experience. And most importantly, the success of old games coming back, such as Dead Space and Silent Hill, being incredibly popular, games that existed before, and they just kind of like have a new beauty layer on top, yet people are playing it a lot more and they are incredibly successful. What does that mean for our industry? And because I've been thinking about it a lot, I would like to actually make this video to kind of like give you guys my perspective and also to ask you guys about what do you guys think about this? Because I do think that we are about to actually hit a new era in games and it's fascinating to me. So without further ado, let's get to it. Right, welcome to another video. My name is Harvey Newman. For those that don't know me, I like to talk about animation, the games industry, and much more here in this channel with all of you. I've been in the games industry for 20 plus years, and when I started my journey, it was all about the single player games. So I worked in games such as GoldenEye, a reboot that came for the Wii, very well received. I also worked on Dead Space, Dead Space Extraction was the one that I worked on. And then I went on to work on AAA games such as Crysis and Fable and things of that nature. Now, the first part of my career was all about single player games, narrative based games that basically you kind of buy the disc, you put it in your console, play the game, you finish it as quick as you possibly can, you feel good about yourself, and you move on, right? And then the second part of my career, when I worked in games such as Star Wars Battlefront and Battlefield and whatnot, it was all about the multiplayer games, right? Like, and more specifically towards the end, the live service games, right? Like, so it's not just the one package that you get, that you drop and then you move on to the next project. It's more about creating the game, putting it out there, and then having a life cycle for years to come that hopefully gets people to actually kind of like continue buying things for the game while you give updates and things of that nature. Now, I think this is fascinating to me, just that I've been fortunate enough to actually be a work in games industry since, like, you know, the games used to be boxed in and put in the shop and you buy a box and you have a disc and all of that goodness. It was amazing, right? But now we are in this place where most games needs to be networked in some way, somehow, in order to be sellable. And the reason why is because, and it's completely understandable, most developers want to have an entry to basically update the game, give you 0-day patches, maybe give you updates. And if it's a live game or a game like Apex or Call of Duty, they want to make sure that there's always something new coming along, right? People always are craving for something new. So if Call of Duty is your main game, then you have something new all the time. So you can play something new all the time, so the game feels fresh every single time. Now, what I've seen as of the last maybe couple of years or so is that there's a lot of games, there's so many games out there that are online, and there is so much attention that any one person can give to all these games, right? And all of the games are basically asking you to give their attention all the time, right? So if you actually play, I don't know, Call of Duty, or if you play a Battlefield, or if you play, let me see what else is there, Apex Legends. So if you play any of those games, the main goal of those games is to basically be so high quality and so premium and make you feel so good that you want to come back for more. And the more you come back, the more you play, the more you actually kind of like eventually, you know, upgrade, and you have your friends and your mates and everything is amazing. You just stay in that game for as long as possible because the game keeps delivering new things. And I'm 100% for it. I'm not actually kind of like dissing anybody or doing anything. This is actually a good thing because the industry has been this way for the last 10 years or so. But I do think that there's only so much attention people can have, and there's only so many games out there that can actually get the attention of most people. So I think there is, and this is just my view, might be because I'm getting old, let me know in the comments, but I do think there is such a thing as fatigue, right? Fatigue of being online, fatigue of being competitive all the time, fatigue of like just have to be online and have to be the best player all the time, because if I go 6 months without playing my main game, next time I go online, I get killed every second and it's no longer fun and I just feel like putting the game down. And I think what this is happening, and this is just my opinion once again, what this is actually kind of like resulting into is that people are kind of like turning away from multiplayer games because there's so much noise out there and going towards the single player experience once again. And the fascinating part to me is that most industries out there, normally they have a cycle of creativity, like the film industry, for example. When it first came along, the people tried everything. This is how animation was created. This is how people started kind of practicing with animation and trying different things. And then eventually they made some standards, and then animation was animation, right? But it took a while. It took many, many years, 50 years, probably more, for things to kind of settle down, and then, having some kind of rules to what exists and how you should work within this frame and where you should go within these things, right? And then it's getting to a point now that everything is very formulaic in film, that you know exactly what kind of genre you work on, what kind of cameras do you use, what kind of lenses do you use with those cameras, things of that nature. So things are very formulaic. Now, I think that the games industry is kind of like going almost past the experimentation phase. We're getting like incredibly realistic games nowadays. Like, I'm gonna put some b-roll of a game that came out not long ago for Steam that was absolutely amazing. First-person game. Most of you must have seen it because it just went viral. But we're kind of hitting the peak of reality, of realism in games, right? So if you're hitting the peak of realism in games and everything feels incredible and everything is just like replicating reality in a game engine, then what's next? And that is my question to most people when I speak with my mates and stuff, and we have certain back and forths about where the industry is heading. And I'm of the opinion that when the experimentation is done, once you actually kind of experimented with everything that you could and you've tried different things and different processes and different pipelines, different studios everywhere trying different things, eventually things kind of calm down and then that formulaic stuff starts happening. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I do think that the formulaic kind of formula of doing things means that you now have a standard that you can lay creativity upon. So film, and again, is incredibly creative. So when you watch Inception, for example, there's nobody that can tell you that Inception is not absolutely amazing. Or Paprika, right? The manga series, or the manga the film that came out a few years ago. Same thing, incredible work. Akira, another Ghost in the Shell. All those films are kind of following similar standards because it's a film, one is animation, one is real life, but similar standards, but they're incredibly creative. And I think that's where the industry is heading at the moment. And I think that's why we're actually getting this new wave of playing single player games. Because what people are doing right now is when games like Dead Space remake and Silent Hill remake came along, they are basically the same games as it used to be before. They are just more pretty, better animations, better graphics, etc. However, people are loving the games all over again. There's been so much time that people are loving this feeling of having a really strong narrative, having really strong mechanics, how the game makes you feel, how professional everything looks, how the developers paid attention to every single detail of the game. Those things were true then, and I think they're coming back to being true again. And I'm not saying that network is going anywhere. It's impossible. We actually have it now. It's absolutely amazing, and I think that's a good thing. Brings people together, and playing with your mates, there's nothing better. But I think that there is a way for us to get to mash both, where we're telling really good stories, with incredible mechanics and actually having an experience from beginning to end that actually makes sense, and also having networking features that don't really force the player to do anything that they don't want to, right? Because, most people get annoyed, I get annoyed when a game asks me to do something that I'm not supposed to, but I have to do it in order to actually progress through the game. So, all of this to say that I think the future is bright, and I think that where we're heading is incredibly amazing. The last point that I want to make is that if you look at the Game Awards have been around for about 6 to 7 years or so. If you look at the list of games that have won the award of Best Game of the Year, there is arguably two games in the list of 7 years worth of Game Awards that are multiplayer. And one of them is Overwatch, and the other one is It Takes Two. This is why I'm saying arguably, because, it's only 2 players. All the other games, Hades and so on, all of the games are actually single-player experiences. And I do think that as humans, especially in games, we feel that the memorable experiences that they go through in games are the single-player experiences, because you do it by yourself, and you are paying attention to everything with such care, and you go through a journey with a character and the player, and it becomes very intimate. Zelda is the biggest example that we have. I mean, everybody that has played a Zelda from beginning to end, has finished it, has felt this feeling of connection with Link. And almost, I've heard people that have cried at the end of Zelda games and has felt incredibly emotional at the end of Zelda games. I know I have. So this is the power of single-player narrative games. And I do think that people are starting to really appreciate how awesome this game genre is. And we're going away from people saying that the single-player games are dead and everything is going to be online only. And instead, I think people are going, I just need more of this single-player narrative magic, and I need a little less of the multiplayer kind of like scene, right? There's way too many things going on. So this is how I feel once again, but I would love to know what you think, because this is very controversial. There is a lot of people out there right now that grew up with online only. Online is the only thing they do and the only thing they know, and they're only getting introduced to single player kind of like experiences through these remakes and this like Game of the Year games. So my question to you is this: what do you guys make of this new kind of like narrative out there that AAA developers are kind of copying each other too much? Do you think it's true? Do you think it's not true? Do you think it's very narrow-minded? And also, what do you think of this idea that there is too many multiplayer games asking for your attention, and instead you prefer to actually play single-player games because maybe you don't have time, or you feel like it's a more connected kind of like experience, right? Do you think this is true? Do you think that this is you? Do you still think that multiplayer is everything? So it would be awesome to know what you guys think. Nothing is black and white. Everything is nuanced. So I want to get a better understanding of where you guys are at as gamers, as animators, to make sure that I have a better idea of what people are thinking out there. Hopefully it's just not my bubble. Hopefully I'm not in an echo chamber and hearing the same stories all the time. This is why I decided to put this video out for you guys to actually give me your opinion. And if you guys like this video, consider subscribing, pressing the like button, and definitely drop a comment with your opinion about this subject down below, because it would be awesome to have a chat about it. Major shout out to all my patrons that support me every single month. If you want to support me a little bit more, definitely head over to my Patreon and then see all the perks that I have over there. And that's all I had for you guys this week. Now, as always, have a great rest of the week. And until next week, stay well, stay safe. Peace.